Good evening and welcome to the Conservation Commission meeting of Friday, Valentine's Day, February 4th.
Friday?
Monday, how about Monday? I'm reading February for Friday, all right. It's gonna be a long night. Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. I guess we'll have some people on Zoom, but thank you for the commission, that every member is present, so thank you for that. It being 7 p.m., do we have any public comments? Any concerns? All right. You have some minutes you want to do real quick like David?
Yes. Basically, I wasn't here at that particular meeting. I reviewed them. I didn't find anything that seems out of place, but I'll leave it up to the members that were there to make any comments about the minutes.
Anybody have any comments?
Nope, I read
I did not see anything.
All right. So would you like to make a motion, David?
Make a motion to approve the December 13th minutes.
That's 2021. Do I hear a second?
2021, that was 13th.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, so passed. Do we have anything else? That clock is slow. I think the clock is wrong. Being 7:05 p.m., we have a continuation of an NRAD for 119 Moore Street, 157613. Mr. Buckley.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Buckley from Bay Colony Group. With me is Lauren Cluck from Pear Corporation, and we're representing the applicant. And what we've, as you stated, this is a continuation of a public hearing. We had a site walk, 2 site walks on January 18th on the site in order to look at the wetland line. And as a result of that discussion at those site walks, we've actually added some wetland lines further out over by the trail, which is more to the north, that runs from Moore Street to Belcher Road. And I'll have Lauren talk about that in a moment. And then one of the other things we talked about was, was the definition of a river, riverfront, and lake. And Lauren, at that site walk, gave the commissioners a memo that she had prepared on that discussion, and as well as we had also filed all of that documentation, hard copy and electronically with the commission. And then finally, one of the other things that we did was we modified the location of the riverfront based on Lauren's review of it. So what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to put the drawing up here in a moment, and you guys have it. I'm going to turn the lights down over there to make it easy to read. And let Lauren discuss.
All right. So, the wetland flags that were added to the line begin somewhere around here. I can't see exactly.
Laura.
Oh, sorry. Hi. So we continued these B-series BVW flags, which originally had ended a short distance off-site. We continued them up all the way to where the water line connects up by this trail, just to have the full picture of what the wetland does up there. As well as on the other side, we added an E-series over here. This is also a bordering vegetated wetland. And then also back in here, we flagged an F-series, which is an isolated wetland, too small to be ILSF, but we wanted to have the limits just to know for that crossing where the 2 wetlands were back here. And then we
And
also...
that's the area where the proposed water main is coming through.
It's going between the wetlands, right, Bill? So,
Yes.
yeah, so kind of along this alignment here. So you have this wetland here will stay out of the wetland, but within the buffer zone, This one over here doesn't have a buffer zone, but we're well outside of it. We just wanted to have the limits there. It's a small isolated wetland, definitely too small to be ILSF. Didn't have any vernal pool indicators. It was pretty shallow. So those were the new additions. And then the area that Bill mentioned, adjusting the riverfront, I don't know how to pan on this sheet, is it? Oh. A different sheet. So the riverfront was slightly adjusted. Originally, I believe it stopped at the upstream end of the bridge, whereas now it stops at the downstream end of the bridge where the riverine channel broadens up to about twice its width into the pond. So that's just a minor adjustment there. That sums up the changes since the original submission.
Okay, there's obviously quite a bit of discussion as to the river. Does it extend beyond the bridge? Obviously, some people have concerns about that, and I guess just for everyone's edification, could you explain why the river stops at the bridge? And
Sure. So in the memo that I provided to the commission, I went over some citations in the regulations at 310 CMR 10.58 that talk about riverfront area and where it begins and ends. So on the USGS topographic map, the river is shown as a blue line up to the crossing of the driveway, and then it enters what's shown as a pond. And the regulations clearly state that where a river enters a pond, the riverfront area stops at the point where the river enters the pond and then begins again at where it exits the pond. So that pond, even though there's kind of a little cove going right up to the driveway, that's part of the pond. It's mapped as a pond. It's always been treated as a pond in the past. In addition, there was an ANRAD filed back in 2011 or 2007, where this discussion had been back then as well. The same conclusion was that it's part of the pond. Obviously when you're standing on the driveway, you have this clear hydraulic gradient on the upstream side. It enters the pond, there's a clear break where it broadens out. So upstream of the driveway, it's about 25 feet. The driveway bridge, it's about 20 feet wide. And then it enters the cove, which is about 40 to 60 feet wide. And at that point, there's a little movement at the inlet, and then it kind of broadens out. And when we were out there, it was actually a great chance to see the change in conditions, because upstream of the road, you had this clear flowing hydraulic gradient. Downstream of the road, it was frozen. There was just a little unfrozen area where the river was entering, and then it was frozen. So that, I believe, is pretty well laid out in the memo.
okay, I just want
Yep.
the edification on that because there's some questions about that. Anything from the board on the river? I know, Jane, you have some comments.
Want my comments?
Sure.
Well, I did some research into this, and basically, the riverfront is where it falls into lakes or flows into lakes or ponds. It stops at the inlet and begins at the outlet. What? Sorry.
But just before we go any further, Jane, Bill, can you expand that area a little bit more?
Can,
on
yeah.
the-
Let me share again. Is that good?
Yep, that's much better, thank you.
Basically, it says where rivers flow through lakes or ponds, unless the issuing authority determines that the water body has primarily riverine characteristics, including but not limited to unidirectional flow that can be visually observed or measured in the field. Rivers are characterized by horizontal zonation as opposed to vertical stratification. And recent Mass DEP decisions give further insight into other primary riverine attributes that are considered critical. Making these determinations will often not always require an expert. Characteristics include the presence of a channel within the water body, historic changes such as dams and control structures, residence time, which is the length of time between water enters and exits the lake or pond, more pronounced unidirectional flow through the center of the water body as compared to other areas, which is a manifestation of horizontal zonation. So finally, in the manner of blah, 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 docket number, blah, 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 final decision, which was in 2005, it was also noted that the morphology of our water body with roughly parallel banks as opposed to more rounded shape is a riverine characteristic. Differences in color, turbidity, and algae may be caused by many sources and are not likely to be determinative of the presence or absence of riverine characteristics. So I have my own little, I guess you'd say, reference, which is the back of my house, and it's a small beaver pond and a river running through it. So recently when I observed that the river was melting and flowing quite rapidly during the rainstorm about a week ago, I went out to look at it and I did a little bit more searching, and I've got an aerial photo from 2020 that actually shows a long sandbar that even would enlarge the river further, except I did go out there this morning and the area is all opened up and flowing, and I have pictures from the road that pretty much demonstrate where the river is. So I think it's clear that it's a riverfront. Back in 2007, when it was called a riverfront, the minutes state that the board questioned when a riverfront starts to be a pond. And then the applicant's representative read from the same section that Lauren just read from. And the commission, which she said was outlined in the ANRAD, so the commission did it. But back at that time, everyone was just trying to figure out where there was a riverfront. For example, around that same time, the broken vernal pool that runs parallel and behind Mason Place was being called a perennial stream, and it's not a perennial stream. This has been it's morphed. The river science has morphed, and the understanding of the Wetlands Protection Act riverfront area has changed. So that's my 2 cents.
Any
I'd
comments?
just like to put up, for Lauren, Lauren discussed this, and this was in your packets, the filing. This is the USGS map that Lauren was talking about that's cited in the regulations. So you can see there's the driveway, see the black line. Here's the Rumford River, heavy blue line, so it's a perennial stream. And here's the pond. They call it Glue Factory Pond. So, I mean, it's our opinion. I think it's very clear, even to a layperson like me. You can look at the references and look at that map and say, if you don't have to go out there and look at it and say, okay, that's where the river would end. And then you could also go out and, as Lauren pointed out, out there that day, you stand on that bridge, look upstream, there is a lot of current. And then you look at the other side of the bridge, and all that is the energy dissipating from that current into the pond. So that's our position, and as Lauren pointed out in her memo, there's no doubt that understanding continues to grow on these things, but the regulations in the Wetlands Protection Act on how to define a river have not changed subsequent to 2007 decision by the commission. So again, it's our position. We know we've looked at it, Lauren's looked at it, back then it was Briscoe. And Lauren's looked at it, and her professional opinion that, okay, we should move it downstream a little bit more. Briscoe had it upstream, we've moved it downstream another 15 or 20 feet.
Any comments from the board? Any questions?
If there's recently Jane just handed out some information in here about review of relevant historical information. It states in here, the recent Mass DEP decisions give further insight to other primary riverine attributes that are considered critical. Making these determinations will often, if not always, require an expert. Characteristics include the presence of a channel within the water body. Now, when the water goes down, there is a definite channel there. There's no question about that.
Yes.
And that's usually probably the only way the water can actually get through to eventually get around and keep a flow. So I don't know how you can overcome that evidence that people have pictures of and can be seen visually. And then when you're standing up there with very high water flowing through after, these rainstorms, you can see that that flow is still going through. Forget about the ice, but under normal conditions, that flow is still moving in a set pattern. It's not really spreading out that much. And we know both sides of that area was filled. You can tell just by the rocks and everything down are located on both sides. So I don't know how you could overcome the presence of a channel within the water body when this is a DEP decision
Well,
of 5.
almost any pond in Massachusetts is an impoundment of a river. Okay. Almost any pond in Massachusetts is an impoundment of a river created by a dammed condition. And when you look in those impoundments, you're going to find a central channel that's a remnant of what was once a river and is now a pond. And it's going to have slightly different geology. And that is during a drought. That is where the flow is going to migrate through. A drought is not a typical condition, and in a lot of ponds, you can see this happen. During a drought, you'll see the flow path where the river once was. But all those impoundments are now mapped as ponds, and they're treated as ponds under the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. And the area that is in question here, clearly it is a more narrow cove, and that's what's, it's right where the inlet is. There's some movement there of water, especially like this past weekend. We had a big snowstorm previously, and then we had a 60-degree day. There's going to be a lot of meltwater coming through. That's not a typical condition. That's going to be representative of a snowmelt event. So you're going to see more movement. You're going to see the ice kind of start to melt beginning in that area where the inlet is. But that's not a primarily riverine characteristic. That area matches the character of the rest of the pond. When I was out there, it was fall, and then again in December. That little cove has the same composition and look as the rest of the pond. It just happens to be a narrow area that's adjacent to the inlet. So I wouldn't say that has primarily riverine characteristics. It has some characteristics that might be associated with rivers, like you see some movement there, especially during a high water condition. But I think unless it's overcome by the issuing authority, the Concom, that it's primarily riverine, we were going to call it a pond because that's what it's mapped as. That's what the regulations would consider it to be, just like any other impoundment in Massachusetts.
Would you consider, though, a portion of this area, maybe 10, 20 feet or so, is really still a river?
We are calling it,
Past that red line, past the bridge, because you can see a distinct movement in a line before it gets out further, maybe 50 feet or so out further. I'm just saying because just by observation and knowing what's underground, and that area is scoured more,
yep,
versus the further out in the pond, you'll have a channel, but it's a
Right.
little bit probably not as deep.
it's scoured because there's flow velocity coming into the pond. So what you have is the river, it's 20 to 25 feet. Then you have a pinch point where it narrows to about 18 to 20 feet under the bridge. So then it's going to speed up more. And then where it enters the pond, you're going to have some scour from that movement there. That doesn't mean the pond is part of the river, just because there is incidental movement of water from being funneled through this bridge and entering the pond.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. Or, if, like how, if that unidirectional flow right on the other side of the bridge is like very consistent,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not, and I think this is kind of what Dave was saying too, I'm not sure why, if it's consistently unidirectional flow all of the time, as it seems to be from observations, why would that not extend to the river?
So you're saying,
Until like the point a little bit past that, like another 20 feet out, where it clearly does sort of spread out and there's still a little bit of movement. We could see it
Yeah.
as when we were out there with like the way the ice had frozen.
How you
But
gonna
clearly,
say
that first
how far
section,
out?
it
know,
seems like it's always
right now
moving.
we've
So
got
Yep.
can you clarify
a
why
spot
that,
that we could
where there's
measure.
always movement?
yeah,
And you sort of
so,
addressed
10
this,
feet?
but I guess I just need a little more
What's that?
clarification.
no, that's okay. So upstream of the bridge, we have unidirectional flow on a hydraulic gradient. So you have water moving in a continuous channel on a gradient. So it's gravitational going
Yeah.
down the slope, unidirectional. When you get to the bridge, it kind of enters the pond and you see a little movement at the beginning. You know, sometimes when you're out there during a high velocity flow, you're going to see more movement, but that's going to continue. You know, it's a small pond. You're going to probably see some degree of movement anywhere in the pond. But when I was out there delineating the wetlands back in, I forget what month it was, in the fall, I didn't observe unidirectional flow in that cove. It was unidirectional flow upstream. Then, you know, it goes under the bridge, and then it enters, there's a little movement, and then it pans out and becomes palustrine. It's a pond at that point. So, you know, I even saw, you know, the water would be not ebbing and flowing like a tide, but kind of moving with the wind. It was no longer this observable current that you would see upstream. It was a distinct break. So,
Any other questions from the board? Jane, Dave?
And a butter submitted a video of the river flowing just from the other day. I don't know what the date was. Has everyone seen it?
Oh, what?
Okay.
Um, I have one technical question. Was he trespassing when he took it?
I do not know. I think he took it from the road, didn't he?
I thought I saw a picture of him on the bridge.
Oh, well, I don't
So,
recall.
I don't want to be legalese here, that's for my neighbor, but that's a question that I would have.
I don't know.
Okay. With that, do we have any comments from the audience at this time?
Hi, this is Carl Vandenboom, 109 Moore Street.
Is that somebody
hear me?
zooming in, Mr. Beck?
Carl.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Little low.
I cannot hear you.
Okay, how's this? Can you hear me any better?
A little bit.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Just to clarify, the video that I took, I was standing on the ice on the conservation side of that property. And the other video was taken from the bridge. So full disclosure, we did take one video from the bridge.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just one other thing I'd like to mention. Some of the documentation I've sent to this commission, if possible, I'd like you to share the GIS map that I found online as well, that does delineate that river a little more clearly than the map that we have been seeing. I don't know if that's possible to share it from your side.
I guess my first question is, what GIS map is it?
I included it in an email to Jane. I'm not sure if it was dispersed to the whole committee.
I did not disperse paper copies. I apologize. I did send it around to all the commissioners, and I have a colored version right here
Oh.
that can be passed around if anyone wants.
I didn't see the map. I saw the 2 videos, but I didn't see the map.
That was about a week or more, about a week ago. It
Oh,
was more, it
okay,
was
all right.
maybe even 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I just hope that that newer map would help clarify a little bit more of the delineation of the river on the south side of the driveway of the bridge.
So the mapping referenced in the Wetlands Protection Act is the most current USGS quadrangle. That's what they would be looking at. So that's what was provided in my memo, and that's what should be used to determine the riverine versus pond qualification of that regulatory reference I provided.
It's the USGS map or more recent map provided by the department. And I don't know, Mass Mapper or Mass Oliver, GIS Oliver might be argued to be a more current map. Mass GIS image. Can we pass it down, guys? It does seem to indicate that there is a good amount of riverfront beyond the driveway. He marked it.
Is it a USGS? What type of map?
It's Mass GIS Oliver.
Okay. Haven't seen it. It's like the streets map. It's
What is that?
still showing it as a pond.
Yeah. So I'll share this with everybody since it was never furnished to us. But I'll put it up here so you can take a look at it.
Okay.
This is that's his Mass Mapper, this is the reference you're talking about. This is the Mass Mapper, this is Mass GIS, and I'm just calling it up. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination you can say that that river is stretching into further in the pond by looking at this. It ends at just like we show it on the south side of the,
This is completely different.
again, it's our position that this is not a DEP map anyways, this is just a base map put out by Mass GIS. And so it's our position that the USGS map would hold, unless there is some DEP map that was put out that says otherwise.
That's interesting. I'll just show you what we're looking at.
And if they don't,
Well, I'm showing you the Mass GIS, so
Yeah,
here's the Mass
okay.
GIS too.
This
Yeah.
is the most
And
current.
this is the most current Mass Mapper down the bottom, I just called it up, you can do it on your
Yeah.
laptop.
Okay.
So,
All right. Any other comments?
I think the most critical thing to remember is that the Mass DEP, I'm assuming this is Mass DEP case law. It's matter of Camionek, docket number 2001-075. Final decision, which was in 2005. It was also noted that the morphology of a water body with roughly parallel banks as opposed to a more rounded shape is a riverine characteristic. I mean, a lot of times that's what happens. You get the laws and the regulations, and then everyone tries to interpret it, and then people challenge it, and there's case law.
Mr. Chairman, make a suggestion before we approve this. that we have a peer review of this definition of the riverfront beyond the bridge, and taking all the information of the past, and the past decisions, and the past analysis by Laura and
Briscoe.
Briscoe, and that if whatever conclusions come about, whether there is an extension of this riverfront or not, will be final, and that the applicant would be required to provide funding for this actual peer review, which would be independent, probably overseen by this commission.
Either that or we could put a little toy boat in at the bridge and watch it go.
So Lauren, like, on the front end where the water is coming into the pond, I guess I was trying to, so you're saying that it's, that's the impoundment and that's where it opens up. And I'm wrestling with this because I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
But like, if you look at the other side of it, right, where it crosses and then it goes out the other side of the stream, it's very clear where the river starts, right? Because then the impoundment opens up and narrows down, and then the water has to gush through that area and becomes parallel again. So like on the flip side, like I'm imagining the water, what Jane was saying, and to the citation you have here, parallel banks, unidirectional flow, it just feels like that first, I don't know how many feet it is, but that first very beginning part of it. On the GIS map you put out, it looks like it's a triangle coming out, right, on the map
Yep.
you're showing us. But when you're there, I mean, the lines are like this. It's a channel. And I have fished there, years ago, and you're right, it slows down a lot in the summertime, but there's still water flowing through there, that first part. I don't know, like, when you make the determination, when is the best time to make the determination? Is it when water is flowing fast right now, because rivers run high, or do you figure out a river by its least, when it has its least amount of flow? I don't know, like, where is it, somewhere in the middle, or what it is? I kind of like the idea what David has of, I think we can argue this both sides, but I might not have agreed. I wasn't on the panel back then. I might not have agreed with the decision early on back then, so I'm not sure. To be fair, we'd just like to get it right, and
Yeah, and to answer your question, I think looking at it during a normal condition is probably the best time to make the determination. I don't think that looking at it when you have a huge meltwater event is the most typical condition you're going to see. I don't think looking at it during a drought is the typical condition you're going to see. Obviously, I think you were referring to the downstream side of the dam, where, of course, there's going to be a defined spillway, and then it discharges to a channel. An inlet is a little bit more of a gray area sometimes.
yeah.
But here, we have a pretty defined point that we can point to. We have a 20 to 25 foot wide river that goes under a bridge, and then it doubles in width and slows down. It happens to be a narrow, somewhat linear shape, and I think that's what we're all getting tripped up on here, is that there is a cove in the pond. It's not a primarily, like Jane was saying with the parallel banks. That's not what the impoundment, the full character of the impoundment is. It's a somewhat, oval-shaped impoundment that happens to have a linear cove at the beginning of it. But that linear cove, it matches the character of the rest of the pond. I was out there during the growing season. It had vegetation in it similar to the rest of the pond. The bank characteristics were similar to the rest of the pond. So, whereas a river, you have a little more scour, a little more undercut bank. Those banks were just very similar to the rest of the pond. So that's my assessment. Having been out there multiple times, I think 3 or 4 or 5 times at this point, a few of those being more normal conditions, and during the site visit too, a pretty normal winter condition where you have frozen water throughout the pond, and then you have a flowing inlet, and then you have a little bit of melting where the water comes in, and then it's frozen, because typically that water is not moving unidirectionally.
I derailed David's conversation, yeah, but, yeah.
I still propose this peer review. I respect Laura's analysis and all the time he spent out there, and Driscoll's, but then we got past history of decisions and discussions, historical photographs, and everybody that knows that area. And I think it's better that we could have that third party make a formal decision that we both agree to, so that it could solve this question about, is there extension of the riverfront area or not? And also because of some of this maybe past decisions with DEP that are not written up, that may be out there, that also could benefit you, or it could benefit the description of what's going on there.
I think we've provided a pretty strong case here, and that's going to take more time. It's going to take a lot more effort. And, it's a gray area, I understand, but to me, it feels black and white. It feels pretty obvious. Looking at the mapping, the most current mapping, even if we're not going to look at the USGS map, we just pulled up the most current mapping, and what did we see? We saw a pond. What did we see when we went on the site walk? We saw a pond. We saw a frozen pond. We saw a moving channel that entered a frozen pond. Of course, there's going to be water movement through any impoundment, no matter the shape. I think we're getting caught up on the fact that there is a linear-shaped cove of this pond. But if you go out there any time of year during a normal condition, when there isn't water rushing down on a 60-degree day after a snowmelt, you're going to agree that it's a pond. It looks the same as the rest of the water body, and we've provided photos from the fall and the winter showing that. I don't know that this is worth the additional
Well, that's
study.
that's your decision. I mean, if you can take the temperature of the room here, and, it's up to you if you want to request that we close the hearing on this, or you want to have someone else address this, and maybe help with some of the uncertainty that some of the members apparently have on, as to the question of the river.
So who is this,
I don't know.
who are we talking about?
Who as to commission members, or
Yeah.
a third party review?
You want somebody else to look
A
at it?
peer review,
Who?
who would you,
Oh, you're looking at me?
yeah, any idea of,
I didn't-
say, a
We
third
would
party
have to
review?
list about three people, and then ask them what they would charge and everything like that, and then they would have to agree to whomever, one of the three, and then they would we'd have to put together like a little contract, and we'd have to have a special account put aside for the amount it would cost.
Hmm.
And then the third-party reviewer would be paid from that account.
And what kind of a time frame are we talking realistically?
I don't know. I'm sure it would not be a quick process as far as finding someone who is agreeable to doing it and who, I think I'd have to put out a
An RFP?
request for proposal or something like that. I'm assuming it wouldn't be that
Do we
costly.
have deals and,
It would take,
contract?
what, at least 2
Like
months,
consultant?
Diana, would you say, for your,
We have a procurement officer now, so there's steps that have to be taken
okay,
through the procurement officer. I think Beals and Thomas is out of the picture because they work with Bay Colony.
The ones that we had in the past that you're thinking of, David?
yeah.
Can't think of their name. They were never paid.
I thought that was Beals and Thomas.
Beals and Thomas
that was
represented the
BSC.
recent one.
BSC?
BSC,
Yeah.
that's the one.
But the planning board just went through engineering review to hire a new reviewing engineer. Planning board just agreed on it last Thursday. I don't know if there's a contract in place with them, and it didn't address anything about conservation, strictly for planning board review. So that's environmental partners that they picked.
Did they go through the procurement officer? So there's a set procedure?
Yes,
Okay,
has to do with advertising, and
right,
it's a big thing.
right.
MACC has rent an expert. I wonder if that would qualify, if we had an expert come in,
a DEP?
give the commission, not DEP, I'm sorry, did I say DEP? MACC. And if one of them were to come in and give us the ins and outs of fluvial geomorphology and how to determine riverfront area, and perhaps point to this as an example.
But then again, they need to have engineering background, hydraulics and stuff like that too.
Oh, they rent an expert, that's why they call it that.
Rented expert.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got a really good group that, I've never done it, and it sounds intriguing, and this might be a way around it to get it done quicker.
You still have to go through procurement, though.
You don't need to go through procurement if it's under $10,000. The real procurement requirements are over 10,000. And I think I've got a couple of contracts for smaller procurement things, and I could ask the procurement officer about that, because it's quite complicated and don't want to go there. But I'm just thinking that maybe to get around it, perhaps, and have education at the same time. I don't know, I don't think that would give you a definitive answer, because they're not going to review things for you, but they'll give you a little class on it, maybe.
I guess my question is, would we get an answer any different than what we're,
Oh, I think we would.
You
I think all you need to do is go out there during a normal flow and stand out on the bridge and let a little sailboat go, or no, little boat go. Seriously, I do think that would show that there is directional flow.
well, obviously, there's, in my opinion, there's going to be directional flow, but for how long? I mean, because when you got as Lauren said, a 20-foot wide river coming into a 10-foot structure, you're going to have flow going underneath it. It's the nature of the beast.
Well, the stream
But does
stats,
that,
sorry.
does that determine that it's a river? As I said, when it's drought conditions, there's a stream going underneath there.
Oh, yeah.
Does that, and I don't have the answer to it, but does that determine that there's a river there? I don't know.
Well, I look at it this way. If you look at the aerial photos when the water's low, and you think about the aerial photos you may have seen of the Mississippi River Delta as it flows into the ocean, it spreads out. That river area is open.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a large area of land that is basically the mouth of that river, where the deposits from soils and silt and such have built up over the years, kind of like a delta.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just all the logic in knowing
But,
what rivers
okay,
do.
As a follow-up on that, the Amazon River goes into the Atlantic, and it's fresh water for close to a mile out. Is that considered a river, or is that the ocean?
I have no idea. I think it's got a smaller watershed. I'm just
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
comparing the
I don't know if we can
overview.
compare this to the Mississippi
Yeah.
either then, Jane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question to move this along. How much further do you think should be further out? How much further? Are we talking 10 feet, 20 feet, 15?
Yeah, that's the issue that I have. Where are you going to draw a line
Right.
if you say that it's a,
So that's my question tonight, is what is it? You've heard the discussion, you've seen other little maps. You were there.
Mhm.
How far out is it?
I would say if you were to take the waterfront area of the pond and extend the line straight towards the opposite shore, you got it. It's sort of near
It's
wetland
taking the
flags.
So are you talking about like out here?
You're off the,
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. So are we talking out here? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the logical location.
Then the answer is no. So we can just, that's easy. It's an easy answer. So we can,
what's that total distance, Bill, for the,
Looks like 80 feet, right? To the end of the road.
roughly,
let me, I have to open up another drawing, excuse me.
About 160,
You got 160?
yeah.
I got 80.
that's 80
Oh,
there.
wait.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
maybe it's more than that, yeah. 120 maybe?
It's in that, yeah, it's in that.
feet, Bill.
I mean, Carr looked at this twice. I mean, the commission looked at it and approved an ORAD, and had the river ending. Was it before the
I think
dam?
Was
Yeah,
it
it was
previously
before the
before
bridge
the
the
bridge?
first
It was
time.
Sorry,
upstream.
before the bridge.
Upstream of
Yeah.
the bridge.
So, I mean, it was just a decision made by this commission. Well, not the same members, but
Yeah.
the commission did make that
One
decision.
member.
for it. And maybe one member was here, so, you know, to the extent we need to review this again, if there's a way to do it, and it, in a very timely way, then maybe that makes sense.
If you moved out, say 20 feet, would you accept 20?
Oh, that's not enough.
Not enough?
That one standing on the bridge and watching the flow of the surface, it went further than that.
I have pictures from the day that we went on the site visit, and when I went back and looked later, I got another picture of, we watched the water flowing, and then you could see beyond, because it's been pretty cold, you could see farther down, there was some foam from where the water had ended, where it was now ending here, the foam was down there. And I think that that is really and truly the approximate location of where the riverfront ends and the pond begins. Let's see. Yeah, and I sent some stuff around to you, who knows when. And there were pictures of the extent of the water and foam that were farther down stream. A little more than halfway probably, a little more than halfway down.
Bill, is there a distance that you guys can propose?
Well, so I'm actually calling up. Sorry.
Way farther out.
Can I just ask something? Like,
Sure.
if they were to agree sort of to move where they think the boundary is, like going forward, is that going to make, it
What
just
kind
feels
of a
like her
precedent?
scientific findings are that this is where it is.
Right.
And if we just sort of agree that we feel better about it being somewhere else, is that not going to make future decisions like this more difficult for us?
It's not based on.
We don't have like
Basically,
a-
you're saying it's
It's
not
not
based on
grounded.
scientific findings, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like either we believe she's
But
right or we
it
don't.
would be non-scientific, neutral to every side to move it forward, so
Yeah.
without prejudice. How's,
And also, the commission has discretionary authority because you know your town. You've watched it, you've fished in it, you've done things over the years. The water that was in the bleacher used to be higher a long time ago. And they used to show on the topo that the river went under the bleachery and out the other side. Well, it still does, but it is not considered the main river anymore because of problems at the bleachery where the water's been kept lower. And it's been discussed in the past that it, the spillway on the other side be removed, so this whole thing would be floodplain and river. So, potatoes, potatoes, really. It is where it is. And it's also in an area that's has rare species habitat and such. So I don't think that it's something that's insignificant.
So, I mean, again, so our position is that we're correct. So, and as Rebecca points out, so now, but this is the reality of, we're always in here, we always think we're correct, and then we,
And you're very good.
And then we negotiate things, and even though we might not agree that in a technical wetland or engineering reason, sometimes we just say yes, because it just moves things along. So the alternatives are, as we discussed, hiring a consultant, which that doesn't preclude anything. We can disagree with the consultant and appeal it. Your neighbor, Kyle, can disagree with the consultant and appeal it. So, I mean, it's another way for you guys, another voice to listen to. We can just close it tonight, and just people have to make a decision. Or we can talk about moving things along.
A
So if you
compromise.
said, Jane was saying, okay, if you can, move it, now that I have it open here, that's probably 180 feet. Somebody said 180. It's roughly average about 180 feet. We will not agree to that. But if you said 20, 30, whatever you thought, our answer is 0. So anything above that, in our professional opinions, is a gimme, kind of. But, we can discuss that tonight. And if you could settle on something that gives you comfort, gives you a comfort level, we can do that.
Any comments from the board?
I understand what Mr. Buckley is coming from. And due respect to all the work you've done, Laura. But if we make a decision like that, as negotiation, without scientific backing, based on all our observations and prior history and prior decisions, but that based on that observation and that there is a channel underneath there, I don't think if you say, come up with a number and agree to that, that's not based on science. If we could say that it's based on observation of the water flow that we've seen a couple of times, and then you'll establish that it's a weak scientific, but it is an observation. Okay? Same thing on East Street, observations.
But as Jane said, we have some authority to, a little leeway. So we're not necessarily setting a cast in concrete decision
34 to
that's going
37.
to,
Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
Oh,
Compel.
Jim, would that be setting a precedent though?
You could see the
I don't know.
coming in, how many
Jeff,
years.
you've been awfully quiet over there. Any opinions?
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make the site visits.
Okay.
I was traveling. I'm just, reading and listening and trying to understand. I've been by there many times, but not taking the time, being able to, taking the time to watch. But looking at the videos and looking at the images and reading some of the things, to me, it seems that if you look at the topography, the geology, it's like, okay, that's what it implies that the pond is, but I also don't know what's been disturbed, how much has been, how much of the banks have been built up because it wasn't originally, is it natural or is it something else?
Definitely not natural. This pond is not natural, and you can see there's lots of fill on there. We did the site walk. There's a stone wall along the edge of the pond that they just put there and then filled to it. But that was back whenever. And this is a
long time ago.
man-made,
Before my time even,
yeah,
so.
it's a man-made pond.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on here that aren't, it's not like we're walking out into the forest someplace and there's this pond, there's a stream coming through.
No.
Bill, do we know the depth of the channel as well as the rest of the retreat pond?
I don't. I mean, you can look at probably some of the pictures that were put out, like Jane has some pictures when it was dry. It's not very deep.
Is it, well, I guess my question more is it consistently the same depth? Do we know?
Pretty much, so I think the whole pond is, yeah.
What it is?
Pretty much out there. I mean, I don't, you can, when you drive by in the summer and it's dry,
It looks pretty flat.
yeah,
there.
pretty flat,
section of it that
at least
drops down.
out there, and then probably gets deeper out in the middle of it. So let me Lauren just pointed this out to me. Can't see that. Let me start this again. So this is Lauren's thought. There we go. If you go to your drawing to take a look at it. So Lauren, why don't you just talk about this? These,
Sure. So, do you mind if I insert seats or, oh, perfect. So here's the bridge here. This is flag, 30, 36, 35. Those are the two flags at the bridge. Then it kind of goes out into a trapezoidal shape to 37 and 34. So this kind of trapezoidal shape here, this is the narrowest portion of that cove where the water comes in. And that's where we saw the water movement during our site visit. The rest of the pond was frozen, but just kind of that entrance in had some movement there. So that, I think there would be some scientific basis if we wanted to extend to where it goes from 20 to, maybe, I think it's about 40. Further down here, it's about 60. But, there's a clear narrowing here that broadens out. So if we wanted to call, I don't know how many linear feet that is built from here to this connection of 34 and 37. I think it would be fairly reasonable to call that part of the river based on what we've observed. I don't think that it's reasonable to say the rest of the cove is a river based on anything I've observed during my delineations, but.
What's the width of the Rumford River?
The part that we delineated, which we didn't delineate very far, it was about 25 feet.
Okay.
And then it goes down. I think the bridge itself is like 18 to 20.
But the river itself is 25?
It's about
And
25.
then it narrows to go underneath
Go
the
under the
bridge?
bridge, yep, and then it's 40. Then it's 40.
And it's 40 where?
Where it enters the pond, what we're seeing is the pond. So I think about,
I'm gonna go
maybe
back.
between, is it 40 feet maybe between these two flags?
Yeah, let me measure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The flow we saw.
Yeah, I had taken a few measurements across and found it was like 40 to 60 approximately wide, so I think that's probably about.
First site visit was here, a little bit
Why
other
is this
than an
not?
open area here. The second time that you went out there, there was no ice
Was.
here. It had flowed. And
Dave, is that acceptable to you? Is that reasonable
Oh,
Right.
by her proposal?
I didn't hear it.
Lauren,
She wants to include that.
I did stream stats on this site, and I put the point of, it's a bankful flow report. So the point that I brought it down to was where the pond starts, or just before it. You can't tell exact.
Like at the crossing, at the driveway?
No, a little farther down from that, what I'm calling the river.
What you're calling the
What I-
river? Okay,
right.
got it.
So at that point, it says that the channel width value is 42.2 feet and the channel depth value is 2 feet, which
Okay.
sounds about like what it is.
I think, you mean the water body at that point, bank to bank? You're saying that the point where the cove enters the main body of the pond is 40 feet? I
Well,
think it's more.
No, it doesn't say that that's what it is. It says the statistical width
Okay,
at that point of the river, because of the size of the watershed and all, would be 42 feet. And the depth would be about 2 feet on average.
okay. So those are parameters on stream stats? I would
Yeah.
have to kind of look at where that information's coming from. I know
Oh, yeah, it
it's-
was on stream stats.
Yeah, okay. So stream stats is saying it's 40 feet where? At the point that you put it in the pond?
At the edge of the pond. It's hard to tell, I mean.
Okay. Because, the stream stats
I didn't.
channels, they go through
Even
ponds, and,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not really sure what point you're trying to make.
What I'm trying to make is if you're saying it's 40 feet wide where it hits
I'm not
the,
saying I'm saying that,
Or she-
about.
She wants to go to here.
I'm just trying to draw,
Between 34 and 37, it's 40 feet wide.
okay, so between 34, so that section that we were just talking about, where, so we have the two flags that are at the bridge, then it goes out. It's like a trapezoid. Between those next two flags, it's 40 feet. That's the narrowest point of that cove. Then further down, it's probably 60 or more. I don't have the exact measurements.
well, that's the pinch point. I mean, if you were to look at the wetland line, you can kind of see how wide it is, and then obviously the area that was filled in, the topography is very, very low and flat. And previously, during the meeting of, way back when, in,
You could.
was it 2007 or something? Bill had said that he said that the water table is high on the site, so I would think particularly there. I mean, it's
67
filled, it
feet.
was a wetland. The River Protection Act was drafted for certain reasons, including, all of the interests of the act, basically. And it's not just, it wasn't created for nothing, is what I'm getting at. And I think that delineating it correctly would give it the proper resource areas that need to be applied for
Sorry?
whatever filing goes on in this site.
Can you calculate the length of the bridge to be?
Yeah, so what would be the channel area, cross-sectional area of the river versus where do those 2 points equate? Like, you've got a flow channel coming in that's the river, there's certain, cross-sectional volume, not, since we're talking about a square footage, a plane which has liquid in it, that's got a certain, amount of water flowing through that per second.
Okay.
Where does that equate on the other side of the bridge?
It's all the same, Jeff.
Well, I mean, so like, if your river is
Wider,
2
yeah.
feet deep, I don't know the number.
But what's happening is, and I understood your question,
Yep,
the rate and volume, the rate of runoff is the same there, under the bridge, or on the other side. It's just the different water elevations will change because of the energy.
no, I
So-
get that, so what I'm trying to get at is to kind of put some scientific number as far as how far down does the river extend?
Yeah.
If there's a certain cross-sectional area where you've got at the river upstream or at the bridge, so it narrows down, so either you have a higher velocity at that point, or you get a higher, a greater depth or greater width. At some point, those numbers have to be equal.
Right, the energy
Yeah, I mean, yes.
is always the same. The energy
Well, I
number is
know-
always the
totally, correct,
same,
yeah.
all the way, at those three
Right,
cross-sections you're talking about.
the conservation of energy has to apply.
Right, it's gonna be just a question of, you're right, it's the velocity and the height, or the height of the flow.
Right,
So
right.
it's going from, it looks like from eyeball, supercritical to subcritical.
Right.
Which to me, and I hate to talk like this, because everybody's eyes are glazing over. But it's
Doesn't me.
It's
I'm
supercritical upstream,
Yeah,
but then it hits that thing, and then you see it go nice and calm. It's subcritical at that point. So it doesn't require as much energy to shove that water, that volume of water, which is going to be the same
right.
through the site. And I see what you're saying is where's a cross-section, but, so
yeah,
what
yeah.
cross-section do you take?
No, and I'm just trying to come up with a point along the way which has some scientific basis that we could say, oh, here's where the river ends versus being, I don't want to say arbitrary one way or the other, but
Right.
something that's going to be a compromise type of a thing.
Right. So, well, what Lauren is thinking, what her point is, between 34 and 37, I finally got this to work, it's about 38 feet in width. And then when you go upstream of the river, say between, I don't know, pick two, R2B1, which is on the top there, and then, which is just before the bridge, and then say R7, that's about 29 feet or 30 feet, and then the bridge itself is, less than 20, the culvert underneath there. So, what we're saying is, if you want to look at it, and you can look at that between 34 and 37, the width of that flow is about 37 feet in that particular area. And then upstream, it's channeling down as it's getting into the river. It's probably,
You mean under the bridge?
under the bridge, yeah. So this is, if I go between R10 and R5, that's maybe 34 feet. I know you can't see it there, but look on your map upstream between R10 and R5. And that's about a width of about 34 feet and that is about, again, that's about 50 feet. Ridge, and what we're talking about is about, um, 30 feet from the bridge. So 30 feet downstream, it's about the same width as about 50 feet upstream. I don't know what that tells you, but gives you some idea.
See those numbers? I don't even see the numbers you're
You know what, you're right, because it's a different thing. So let me look, it's R3 and 104, let me do those two, because those are the ones on there. I have so many different places.
R3.
Flagging numbers?
Yeah, I'm looking at old
104 is
flags.
Yeah,
now.
it's got so many
And
flags.
Those
on
are
it.
Briscoes from 2007, I
I
think.
know. Okay, hold on.
Maybe if we go from here,
Close numbers, though.
straight across,
So that would be one,
that'd be about 40 feet. Yeah,
30.
in between, no, in between.
In between those two. Okay, propose it.
Okay. So between R3 and say R103, is that a good?
Yeah, that sounds better.
3 and 1, that's about 32 feet wide. If you have a scale, you can see it. And then between A34 and A37, that's about 45 feet wide. A34 and A37. So the two that Lauren was talking about,
But again, is
That's that much wider.
A34, is that kind of parallel?
34. So this is the bridge here, and then it goes out, this is 34, and then out, this is 37. So if you connect those two, that's kind of where it goes from the 20 feet to the 40 feet. Further down here, Bill took a quick measurement, it's about 67 feet wide. So it does broaden out quite a bit more than 40 feet.
it's not exactly parallel, Jeff, so.
Because is
that
it
would-
like
34 and
34 and
39.
36, those are kind of perpendicular for the channel, right, for the water, right?
So 34 is here, 37's here, 35 and 36 are at the opening of the bridge. So what I would propose is to take the river, if we're going to extend it, it would make the most sense to take it up to 34 on this side and 37 on this side. It's where we kind of have this angling out of the water. It's still fairly narrow. It's about 40 feet wide. So as Bill mentioned, upstream.
34 or 33?
I'm-
34.
I think
The
more like
number's not where the
33 or
flag is.
32,
Because
Okay.
because it's
even with
pinched.
Because 34 looks like it's
water is
up right by the bridge.
in the
30
rocks.
34 is a little further
across or
away from
whatever.
the bridge.
Yeah.
34, the number is sitting at the bridge because of where the
Look at the,
annotation.
Oh, okay, so is
The
the,
point itself,
okay, yeah, so I'm looking at, I was thinking the number was a lot closer to the marker than, yeah,
No,
okay,
yeah.
to the right, so that's the point.
Yep.
That's the point,
okay.
yeah.
34 and 37, did you say?
yes, 34, because that's
More
where it
like
comes out.
33 and
then
37.
33 is
It looks
there.
like 33 on ours.
So 33 is, yeah, so 37 is kind of across from a
Yeah.
point between 33 and 34.
Yeah.
So
So-
33
if we
is
were to
more
take
across.
37 and go like straight perpendicular, it
Yeah,
would be kind of halfway between 33 and 34. You know, having the flag there is a nice reference, but if you had to say, pick a distance and then connect, I think that would be a good point. Somewhere between 33 and 34
oh, okay, I see.
here,
The flag is
before it
there.
starts tripling in width and quadrupling in width
32.
further down.
So,
That would be a reasonable point, because at that point,
want to make,
you're kind of.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a proposal for you, Mr. Buckley and Laura. Based on our commissioner's observations on the sidewalk, scientific, though it's observant, maybe biased, based on Ms. Pierce's photos later showing where the water action on the surface seemed to disappear, the foam location and that. Based on the presence of a channel underneath there, which you can see historically in dry periods, and based on WPA's definition, the characteristics of a river, the unidirectional flow that can be visually observed or measured in the field, I would make a proposal that that riverfront area disappears into the pond, or however you want to call it, water body, between flags A38 and A33.
About 40
Yes.
feet from the bridge. Thank you.
That's good.
Right, 32 and, I'd say more like 33 to 38A. Because that's about where the foam was probably, the foam that I took photos of was probably out at around, it's hard to say, around 31. It was very close to a tree right in the general vicinity.
This was the day of the site walk that,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I took pictures, and you could see that it was just freezing up this way, and it had been very, very cold. And you could see a line of foam,
Okay.
which basically has been pretty constant from what I can tell.
Yeah, we do, at my company, we would do a lot of dam repair projects. I'm out at dams all the time flagging wetlands, and you see foam all around impoundments sometimes. I don't know if that's really a reliable indicator of where to say it's pond versus river. But
Well, you were kind of pointing to the foam at the frozen portion during the
was-
site visit,
I was pointing to the
the
line of
close
where,
one.
I was pointing to the line of where there was a clear break between water and ice. I actually don't think I referenced foam as an indicator of riverine. That's why I don't think I would have.
Well, the place where the water and ice meet in the picture from that date had foam.
Had moved.
On the date of the site visit, there was foam right where the ice was starting to form.
Yeah.
Mr. Buckley,
Yes,
will that work?
I'm checking. So,
I'm making this
I understand.
idea scientifically
understand.
based on 3 items. that
No, I
are not
understand, I
the
mean,
strongest.
It feels like 37 is more the angle point, 38 feels a little more
Yeah, it's,
arbitrarily situated on this linear section, whereas 37, so you have the bridge, you have 37, and then
and
kind
it
of
breaks.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I was pointing to that as the point where the flow comes in, it diffuses out.
Either that would be
But-
a period.
So how many feet out is that? Because you had
37.
pointed to that during the site visit, for that particular spot.
To the 37 point, I think Bill's measuring.
Yeah, that's
it.
about where you had pointed to, I believe.
It's about 23 feet from the
Do we do?
south edge of the bridge, or the west edge, the downstream edge. And 38 would be, if we use 38, it would be roughly 40 feet.
I think
Verify
32 to
boundaries.
38A is more like a conservative end of the river.
Yeah. I think if you want to use 38, okay.
No, I'm saying 38A, 32 and
Well,
38A.
I know,
David has
I'm
said
saying-
38,
I'm saying
so-
38, so.
oh,
38 to 33?
So the riverfront, as you guys know, is, you draw a line and it's perpendicular, so it's the flow and it's perpendicular to the flow. So 38 and 33 are not on that perpendicular line, so I'm not sure. 33 is further, if I take that,
is here, 33.
Yeah,
About halfway between the
38
two.
is here.
yeah, I mean, they're not gonna be
Okay, so
perfectly
that's what
opposite,
David's proposing.
so maybe we.
you know what, David? They are.
Are they
They're
perfect
right on,
opposites?
they're right on. Okay, done. 38 and 33.
Okay.
That's,
All right, now then,
I mean, and that, to me, that, I mean, based on the numbers you had, Bill, those look about, so you've got about the same, conservation of mass, the volume in there. Volume is not the right word I want to use because it's two-dimensional. You know what I mean.
yeah, great.
So, in the conservation of mass at that point, which if that matches up with the upstream,
get with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
at least there's some science behind picking a point that's in that same bulk, in that same range.
So if you guys want to close the hearing based on,
Well, okay, I want Dave to make that an official motion so that we can,
We'll do it.
the commission can vote on it.
We accept
Should we have a revised
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah,
because they're
okay.
going to modify the plan based
Yeah.
on that change.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So where would that put the riverfront area?
between 38 and 33. The
No, I
riverfront-
mean the riverfront, which you had stopped at the bridge, which is what you do at a culvert.
So you'd slide, you take that red line and slide
Slide
it
right down.
to 38 to 33, and it's almost perfect.
Yeah.
What
You wouldn't do this?
perpendicular to that. And that's about,
If that's what it is, it's gonna go.
and it's about,
They were using this as a pinch point,
Shift
the bridge.
40 feet.
We usually do that at a culvert.
it's got to be, it's 40 to 43
Yeah.
feet
Yes,
roughly.
but you do that,
Okay.
that's how you're supposed to
Further
measure at a
downstream.
culvert.
No, I understand, but we're making.
All right, before we do this, any comments from the audience?
Then that's, it's gotta be parallel with that.
Hearing none?
That's not gonna get you a whole lot then.
No.
You're still gonna be able
Why
to
should
put
it be a
a
rule?
bunch of crap in there.
Whether
You all set, Jeff?
the other members agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it.
I hear a motion to close the hearing for 157-613.
I'll make the motion to close the hearing for 157-653.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
It being 7:10, we have a continuation of 28 Camp Road, 157-609. Oh, okay, thank you.
My battery.
What's that?
I have a copy. This? Then you go to Verizon.
I picked up, I think I grabbed the one I thought. Maybe not. Yeah, I did.
Ready?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Buckley from Bay Colony Group, and I'm here representing the applicant, Mr. Donald Triani, for notice of intent filed for 28 Camp Road. So just as a very quick recap, it's been a while. So the commission had an initial public hearing on this, and there were some questions and comments made, and then a site walk was held on the site, and I don't have the date, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. And we went over some changes to the proposed plan based on comments and thoughts from the commissioners. And what we've done back on January 25th, which you should have in front of you, we prepared a small cover letter, and we had 3 attachments to it. So basically what we have is an initial plan. I'm going to put it up here. You should have hard copy of it. So this is the drawing, and what it is the septic proposed, or actually the proposed addition and septic design for the project. And I'm going to zoom in down in this area of it because this is the area of concern. So it has a proposed house addition. And some of the things that we added as a result of that site walk, down in this area here, this was the proposed pool. This was all laid out. And so this proposed pool with a little patio around the outside of it, a retaining wall was going to be tied into it and then wrap around in this direction. And then the siltation control limit of work, you can see the heavier one that's down there. There's no activity proposed in the 25-foot no-touch zone. This type of activity. I'm going to go into it in a moment. In addition, what was done is we met with Carol Lundeen of Garden 911, who does a lot of work, I guess, at the Lane property, and asked her to give us some ideas and thoughts on restoration down between the new back of the house and the water. And she came down and did a site walk, and you should have her a memo, narrative plan that was written by her. She did an assessment of the project, and then a proposed restoration plan, which I'm not going to go over, but I am going to put up her the third item that we filed, which was the actual restoration plan. Let me zoom in on it. Now share it. And here we go. So this is the actual restoration plan. Again, I'm going to zoom up on the area. You can see up on the top here, there's a restoration planting schedule that she had, which ties into the letter report. And then down below here, this was her recommendations on the restoration. So there was 2 different areas, which was, between the, where it says siltation control. You see, this plan doesn't have the wall, but her activity doesn't stretch up in that area. So she put together a plan down in the area between the barrier and the actual waterfront. So there is activity taking place in the 25-foot no-touch zone, as well as, outside of that area. And again, it's hard to go back and forth. But up top here is her narrative on what should be done, the listing, so you can see the number of plants involved. If you go into the letter, which is, this is the letter she gave us, should be able to go into it. She gives you the listing of the plants back there, more sketch, and then she gives us guidelines on removal of invasives and how the planting should be done. So I think we did everything that was asked at that site walk, there was a big, large stump that we are proposing to remove. It was just, we were talking about, I know we were talking about different things out there, but really, it's just going to,
No, I know.
it's just going to rot. So at some point, it's just going to rot and fall in. So we just want to remove it now while the construction is going on, and then not have to deal with it in, 5 years or whenever it happens. So that was the only
Which one
thing.
was that?
That was that big one right over in this area here.
Uh,
Oh, okay, where it turned, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So that's it.
Now, okay, that's is that within the 25, or is it outside the 25?
It's outside the 25, right?
Actually, it's close.
Right on
It's
the
right
line.
where that existing silt fence was.
Right, it's the
Yeah,
fill fence.
okay.
It's really close.
But it's
Now, are you
it's
gonna pull it
inside,
or
but
grind
probably
it?
the roots are, some of the roots are outside.
That's someplace.
It's inside, but
Okay,
some of
are
the
you-
roots are probably outside,
Yeah,
because it's
okay.
like 4 feet.
My question is, are you going to try to pull it out, or are you going to grind it?
We want to pull it out, because grinding it is, you'll just get on something that big, it will slump again. And I think it's mentioned in her report, that if you just.
Yeah, no, I've had some stumps ground, and they do settle in, they eventually,
Right. But there was probably 3 or 4 other stumps within the 25. They're just not being touched. But that one there, those were smaller, so they're not going to be an issue. But that one, we think, will become an issue.
Coming here anyway.
Yes, yep. This is existing.
Yeah, this is, it's actually page 3 of 5. It's in the first paragraph, a second paragraph. She talks about, removing or grinding the roots would compact the soil, risking erosion, subsidence, and subsequent erosion. So the only one we want to remove is the big one. The other ones we'll just leave there, and we can fill that in when we're doing this other work in the area.
any questions, comments?
So, I mean, I missed the last meeting for the same reason I missed the sidewalk for that other site, the other project. But getting back to similar things, so there was a previously approved project, which had the limit of work was much closer up to where the existing house is. And that was an approved project, and it was before you got involved. And I know that RIM was involved with both of them. I'm just wondering what the resolution of that was. And if there's rehashing old stuff you guys talked about last time, I apologize.
Well, we haven't met. We just, we haven't met.
Oh, so this is the
This is
first
it.
meeting since then?
Yeah, we've had the site walk. It took quite a
Okay.
while for
Carol, to get out.
Carol to get the stuff out and get it done. So this is really our first meeting we've had since the site walk.
Okay.
So this is it. So there really is,
There was a site walk which some of us attended, which, RIM didn't attend that day, it was back in September. Well, again, well before you got involved.
right. I did the last site walk.
Right. So there was the previous project had a limit of work, which was probably 50 feet in or more. Maybe 50 feet in versus where this is located at 25.
Right. Well, yeah, it almost touches the 25.
Right.
At that one point, and then it kind of fades away. And actually, let me go back to the other drawing, since that's the correct one. There we go.
Now,
So
correct me if I'm-
that's the one with the actual work. That has the wall on it.
Okay. Now,
Well,
I think what Jeff is talking about is the original RIM was to demolish the existing house
Right.
and build new.
And there was a limit of work which was much farther away from the reservoir. It was
Right.
approved by the commission.
That's correct. So
Yeah,
that
there was.
basically, that order, Jane, correct me if I'm mistaken, but that was closed out as null and void, correct?
It was closed out as never begun.
Yes. So it's,
Work never commenced.
Right.
so it's a moot point at this time. This is a completely new filing.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I actually took it, I took the red line, that's from the old plan. And you're right, it's 20, at least 25 feet
Right.
further, closer to the wetlands than this is. But, also we understand that, there was work done that, but this was part of it. This is why we reached out to Carol at
Yep.
Jane's recommendation. She said, no, this woman's doing great work for us over here. So I don't know what happened, but we're trying to do a restoration. You can see it's a significant restoration. We didn't change one thing. We took her letter and said, okay, we'll do it. So all of the plantings, so the area will be 25 foot all the way down to the water. There'll be a restoration done in that area. And
Yeah, the
then-
reason, partly comes that there was work that was done outside of that original limit of work before coming to the commission,
Yes.
which bothers me.
Yes.
which You understand. And I very much appreciate the fact that you guys have done and gone to, to get this information on the restoration plan. I very much appreciate that.
It's penance.
Two things, Bill. Can that plan that shows the colored areas with a lot of little dots in it, can that be a larger scale plan for the office? Because I assume that's what the plantings are?
Yeah, it's a 2436. Did you only get little ones? Is that what I gave you?
That's all we got.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can print these are 2436s. I just print them out, so,
Just want to have a
Jane,
larger
what
one
size-
in the office for.
Which size would you like?
full
Like the
size.
larger one, I seem to have taken, I don't have the copy of the recently submitted information except for my printout.
Okay.
Bill, is yours, is yours, do you have a vector up there versus a bitmap? So I can't read I can't even come close to reading this up here.
No.
The plantings on,
Oh, yeah, I see it, yeah,
it's like half-point font.
yeah.
It's in this too, isn't it?
Yeah, let me go back to this.
If you've got that as a vector, you can blow it up and we can read it, which you do. You don't have a bitmap, which is perfect.
So that's it. And like Don said, it's also in your memo as well.
Yep. Okay.
So that's our, citation.
One last thing, timing versus construction, allowing you to go forward with construction, because usually restoration work is, we try to have it done first before activity starts occurring and digging and house building. She does mention late winter, spring on some of the plantings on page 4, I think.
Yeah, installation of potted and B&B can begin in the late winter, early spring. Planting should be completed by late spring. Native seed mixes should be done according to the thing. So, can you do that?
Yeah.
So we'll-
She actually had said that she would, as soon as I contact her, she would, I know that she gave a couple different ones, whatever's available too. I guess they're not always available, so she would make a recommendation when we could do some in the spring, some in late summer, fall, is what she had explained to me. And she was very willing to come back and assist in how we're gonna do this.
Okay.
I think we should have in the file for Jane roughly what the time schedule might be. Because she has to observe this every once in a while.
So what you could put in there is that we have to give you a construction schedule prior to construction. And,
I think that's pretty standard
yeah,
anyway.
and we can have, she can talk directly to, or we'll have our consultant talk directly to Jane to just work that out.
As long as you understand the
Yep.
restoration work usually
She-
needs to be done
yeah.
first.
And she was clear about she would, give us some assistance on when to do this stuff.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Because some I believe in certain different areas, she would say, you might have to do some here, and then go to this section, and then go back to that other section, depending on the time period of when
So I
we
hear
do
you
it.
saying, you'll do some in spring and some maybe at
Correct.
the end of winter.
That's exactly what she said.
It's
And I
over a
think some of the
period of time.
grass was a key one, too, that she was,
Okay.
So you're planning on doing construction this spring,
yes.
so the restoration is gonna take place spring to winter during the construction.
If I recall, the two time periods were spring and then late summer, early fall.
Okay.
Were the two time periods she said plan on doing.
That makes sense, yeah.
Can I,
And,
oh, sorry,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
just a slightly different note. What's the plan for the space like between the proposed retaining wall and the limit of work? Is that going to be lawn area?
That is going to be, Jane, help me out. What's that?
Is
The
that
lawn,
grass? That special
Yeah.
grass?
Oh, the,
grass
Seed,
mix?
yeah.
Jonathan Green's Black Beauty
Yes.
original.
right. It doesn't require, fertilizer doesn't require a lot of water. But it's green, and you can walk on it.
Now, where is,
Thanks.
oh, there's the wall.
Between the wall and the back of the
It's a
house.
small area, it's like a,
What, it's not, there's nothing on here. What's the plan for access to the reservoir? Is it just, you're gonna just bushwhack down to where you're gonna go?
Yeah, she
Or are
actually.
you gonna put something in there that's gonna be a,
Is already there.
It's already there.
Trail there,
It's over on, well, if you're looking from the back of the house, it's on the left side.
Yeah.
And we spoke about that also. You should just leave that the
so
way
is
it
that,
is.
it's
As long
going
as we
right
can-
down to where the dock is?
Yeah, actually, it comes down to the left side of the lot and then goes back towards the dock. It's more further to the property line.
Yep. And there's not gonna be anything anything on the retaining wall as far as stairs or things like that? It's gonna
No.
be whatever pathway you'll have that's already existing, that's already there?
Right, because the retaining wall of that side there dives right into the existing grade. So there's a little walkway that's there now.
Right, so so the retaining wall ends at the pool, at the edge of the pool, right?
Yes.
And the shed's gone,
The
right?
shed's going, yes.
Shed's going too, so you'll be able to walk around down that direction, which is what they do now.
Bill, if you could just sketch that on there where it's already there, just so we can see where that is.
Yeah, we'll have Rem do that.
I mean, even if it's roughly, I mean, it's, just something that say, hey, yeah, there's already a base, a rough path here. And just so that we know, so when the restoration work is going on, nobody tries to put anything in where that, hey, why didn't you put something here, where we know there's a path.
Okay.
Anything else? Jane, any other comments?
I didn't bring my notes, unfortunately, they're in my other plan, because there are about 3 or 4 different files for this site. I would,
It's hard to understand you. Could you, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Would Carol be overseeing and managing this?
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, that she said at any time, give her a call. I need a little bit of assistance in the planting. And she said
Yes.
she'd be happy. She's still, we signed a contract with her to go through the project, so she absolutely.
So she'll be basically managing the planting and the maintenance and such?
We're gonna do the work and she's gonna come out. She actually wanted to look at some areas to where she may wanna move some things around. Is exactly what her exact words to me.
Did
And I
she,
said,
I know that there were no leaves on anything, so she couldn't see what the vines were, but could she tell where the wisteria vines were?
She was out, oh no, she got them.
She did good.
She found them, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And she went out twice with me and then twice more on her own. So she's got a pretty good handle on where things should go.
Okay, good.
Where they'll do, her biggest thing was where they're gonna do best. She wants to relook at it again in the spring when we go to do it. And she basically said to me that she'd be able to point to tell us where to go with it. And the best method too, because some of that's gonna be pretty difficult to dig through, some of the roots and so forth that is there, all by
Yeah,
hand.
and you don't want the equipment to compact soils more.
Exactly. So it was a pretty extensive 2 walks.
Well, I don't see anything about how the invasive vines are going to be eradicated. Did she talk about that in? Well, I didn't see it.
She talked about it, but she wanted to see where it was most dense. And then maybe we'd move away from those areas for the new plantings so that they would have a better chance to grow.
But she's going to get rid of the invasives.
She said
Yeah,
she
it
would.
was, it looked like a completely different site without leaves. When I was there that second time, I was pretty surprised.
But like I said, obviously, to get this correct, she's gonna need to consult.
So we'll need an updated, larger scale plan and a construction sequence?
Right.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Do you understand that we usually require plantings are being maintained for 2 years?
Yes,
So that
I'm
could,
living there, so I'm not selling it.
okay,
I'll be living there, yeah.
okay. So that'd be 2 years after the plantings in the summer, fall.
Correct. Yep.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean,
That's a condition.
the document,
You know,
Dave,
like
says
some
that
people are-
that even for the invasives, is a 3-year implementation plan, monitoring plan, so.
Where do you see that?
Page 2.
Ah, yes. Okay. So then is a 3-year invasive plant management plan, a 3-year implementation going to be drawn up or brought, or put together or whatever?
Well, what I would suggest, I mean, she just couldn't do it because of the conditions, and she's not gonna be able to do it now, I don't think. But you can make it a condition of approval. My suggestion, if you want to think about it, is a pre-construction meeting that includes, what's her name?
Construction
Carol.
sequence, yeah.
And then at that point, you'll get a planting plan updated because she'll have identified the plants that are going to be available. And then you can pin down the construction sequencing a little bit better at that point, again, because she'll know what the mix is going to be. And then she can also present the invasive removal plan at that point, too. Those 3 things.
So you can't do it beforehand in any way, shape, or form? Can she give a general plan and such?
I don't know. I mean,
If you could ask her, I really don't feel comfortable with, approving all this different stuff and work in the 25-foot, or what's going to be done, without having specifics that I don't need to research and be on top of.
well, I don't think you do need to research it. I think she just needs to present to you the actual physical plan. You're going to say, what I think you should say is invasive shall be removed, and that we have to have an invasives plan prior to that.
What I'm getting to is, we really should have all of these things up front, because that's a critical part of this whole filing. This is the most critical part in my mind.
So Jane, isn't this plan pretty much what you're looking for? The implementation of it?
I guess so. I couldn't really read because it was so small.
Yeah, I realize that. That's the reason why we're asking for a readable set of, so, but that, I think that in a nutshell is what you're looking for.
Okay.
Well, she also mentioned that she was going to provide a invasive management plan.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to see.
And I think what Jane is trying to say, that if that's going to occur, then that should be attached
Yeah.
to the order of conditions.
Yep, reference, yeah.
Well, we could actually attach it to the order, and it could be recorded so that it was
So take
something
it
that
at
was
that
a definite that would be done.
Right.
Because if I put all sorts of conditions in there, they follow plans. They don't follow conditions.
We're not saying we're not gonna, problem is, there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, or a foot, or whatever's out there.
Yeah.
And so, we don't want to wait until April to have her come back out to draw a plan. I don't see why you couldn't make it a condition of approval that it has to be done. And it has to be done. We've hired your consultant to do this, and, she's been hired to do so.
What I
So
was
just
talking
to
about,
move things along.
it was construction sequencing and how things would be done, not the actual plan itself. The generalities in this sound good, but it's the devil's in the details.
Right, and the point is she doesn't know the details yet, because she doesn't even know, what she said is, I wasn't there, but told Dawn, is she doesn't know yet because she can't see what's there. So what is going to be done?
So what I think I heard Jane saying is she was looking for, we're gonna start restoration here, and then start, do that part, then construction, and then, restoration in the fall.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's what you're asking, right, Jane? Is it kind of like a schedule of when you plan, not detailed plan?
Well, basically,
But a general plan of wanting to do this first and stuff.
well, she said existing invasive species are numerous, and an invasive plant management plan and 3-year implementation/monitoring is recommended. So invasive plant management plan
Right.
is something that would be relatively generic to certain species, and how she'd go about eradicating them and preventing them from growing again and that kind of thing, and that's all something that she could just probably
Because she has that list,
put it down. What list?
That's fine. We can do that. I mean,
Okay.
it's hard to get things done, but that's fine. I'm sure we can
It's just one more piece of insurance.
get it done in
really.
the next,
I mean, if it
2
can't be
weeks.
planted in the spring anyways, until spring anyways, and if the commission wanted this to be planted before you start construction work, see what I'm saying?
okay. We can get that to you,
Yeah.
Okay.
but I think, if you don't mind, you can close the public hearing, and we'll get it to you prior to you issuing an order.
Okay.
If you
Can we,
want.
well, we can't close it yet, so we'll close it and issue an order of conditions at our next meeting,
All right,
pending
receipt,
receipt of all the information.
okay.
All right. So a motion to continue 157-609 till our next meeting.
I'll make that motion to continue
When's the next meeting?
157-0609.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Thank you. You take a 5-minute break? Thanks.
Oh, that was the end of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think so. That's why I want to take a break.
Okay, while you're doing that, Jane, what's this letter from APLW, Ray Defense
Yes,
on Water Street?
yep.
Want to discuss that?
Well,
Informal discussion.
okay, informal discussion, you can read that into the record if you like.
Is it in? Do we have the letter?
Not in the package? Yeah.
I don't think I have it.
All right, let's,
your phone, Bob.
My phone's on my kitchen table.
can you find it?
When did you send it?
Yes.
Look.
I'm gonna see if I can find it.
Was on February 3rd.
All right, let's see.
Dated January 17th.
Okay,
I don't really want to read the whole thing.
not really. Um, Do you have it in front of you?
I'm trying to bring it up.
Oh, okay.
We talking about the fishermen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, on behalf of the APLW group, which is Access to Public Land and Water, this person is challenging the status of Cocasset Lake Pond as a private lake in the town of Foxborough. So they've challenged that for several reasons. And then they said, based on the above, the waterway herein known as Cocasset Lake Pond should be open and accessible to the public for all legal recreation. We therefore ask for the following actions to be taken to reinstate the status of it. The fence located on town property at Water Street be removed. The private status be revoked and public status be instituted, and all associations to Cocasset Lake Pond no longer be recognized. APLW is a private ad hoc group established 4 years ago that is comprised of residents of Foxborough who meet once per month with the goal to protect and preserve access rights for hunting and fishing to all public land and water in the town of Foxborough. So, thank you. So I met with Bill Keegan about this, and we discussed what could be done and what should be done with Chris Gallagher. And the fence that is currently along Water Street is on town-owned property. And so Bill Keegan said that he was going to speak to the association about removing it and replacing it with I guess the town has contractors who install guardrails. So replacing it with a guardrail. And he's going to run with it.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't realize that until you started reading. Yes, I did read the letter, obviously, because I started the ball rolling before you were ready.
Oh, all right. So basically, the Water Street is 50 feet wide, and it's all owned by
And
the
the fence
town.
that's there, a number of years ago, we gave them permission to replace in kind, and they replaced.
We didn't even give permission for that. It would have been an exempt minor activity if
Yeah.
they replaced the exact same thing.
But they didn't.
But they didn't, and they didn't file a request for determination either.
Yeah. So the fence is there illegally.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, I guess it had been moved 6 to 12 inches towards
Yeah.
the street.
And
So
it's-
it wouldn't have been in kind.
Yeah. And it's much larger than the original fence. So, okay. All right. "31 Water Street, 157-610. I have an order of conditions. You want to start us off?
Do what, review it?
Sure.
Well, the order of conditions lists many final approved plans and documents and abutters, comment letters, project description. I wrote out what the description was, and I included the 100-foot buffer zone calculations in square feet.
Jane, could you pull the mic a little bit closer to you? 'Cause you're
It's a
fading
darn
out.
mask, okay. So the calculations include all the impervious areas and trees that will be removed, trees that will stay, waterfront shoreline length of the house and the peninsula width, and the size of the, basically 3 parcels, which are 2 will go to Lot 2, the one that is being proposed to be built on, and alterations proposed. I put together the procedural history about when this was filed, the public hearings, when it was noticed in the paper, continuations, and then the waiver of the 21-day requirement to allow the commissioner to review the order of conditions and findings during the meeting on January 31st, which had to be continued because of a lack of a quorum due to the weather and a family illness. So we did receive a second grant of the waiver of the 21-day requirement. And let's see, an invasive plants finding on Lot 1 and Parcel A. In recognition of the pristine native plant community on Lot 2, the Foxborough Conservation Commission hereby finds that the best management practices, or BMPs, described in Appendix A, special conditions, and I haven't filled this out yet, shall minimize potential introduction and/or encroachment of invasive plant species from the disturbed portions of the site, project site, notice of jurisdiction, and resource areas, delineation, and conditions that are general, so, and then all sorts of special conditions, 10 pages worth. I included conditions about things that needed to be submitted before any work could occur, including a detailed buffer zone mitigation landscaping plan, a boundary marker location plan, topsoil management plan, including details of all grading and earthwork, material storage plan for use at the work site showing where local topsoil and dead plant material shall be removed or excavated, stockpiled, and reapplied. And these documents will become a part of the order, including information, the Foxborough Buffer Zone Restoration Guidelines, and TNC's Invasive Plant Management Mechanical Fact Sheet. Then, so a lot of these were boilerplate, but I have a section on buffer zone mitigation area requirements, which include an on-site meeting before commencement of work, which needs to be done before any of the house can be built. It needs to be completed and approved. Let's see, native plants, a native plant specialist shall be required for this mitigation landscaping of low-growing native plants 10 feet wide, extending inland along the 25-foot no activity zone buffer line. And basically what to do so that you will not move or create more, spread the invasive plants. How's that? BMPs to prevent the spread of invasive plants, which was based on a Connecticut document that was all about, that was like the Connecticut invasive species, invasive plant group, and their recommendations for conservation, for construction projects, rather. It talks about the requirements. Requirements for many things like soil and excavated material, management of existing topsoil and dead plant material, soil stabilization, handling excavated material from biologically contaminated site, meaning invasive species, and site stabilization, slopes and materials. Post-construction, it says that the applicant shall demonstrate that the project's buffer zone mitigation areas have been successfully completed for at least 2 growing seasons, have been reestablished with 75% cover of native plant species. And then in perpetuity, additional alteration prohibited without the required review of permits, no pesticides, herbicides, landscaping, no invasive plants. And then special conditions under the bylaw are similar, but they include information about the boundary, buffer zone, boundary, 25-foot no activity zone, boundary markers. And
Just still reading this to make
so
sure that.
that is what I've drafted. It's been a bear. I've worked on it straight for about 2, 3, 4 weeks now. And I want it off my desk.
Can I make a couple of comments,
Please.
Mr. Chairman? Page 3 of the order form. Under findings, you have checked off public water supply, but Cocasset Lake isn't a public water source. Why
It's
would- why-
upstream, it's just upstream of the, one of the town wells.
Okay, so that's the reason why that's checked off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have wells down Sprague,
Yeah.
so this goes down there.
Okay,
Anything, okay? You had a couple, you
I
said.
just want to summarize what is going to happen here for everybody, so we're all on the same page. And Mr. Buckley is going to help me out.
I'm
So-
still reading.
So the first thing is, you're going to be marking out the 25-foot no disturb zone in the field by a registered land surveyor or engineer. And they'll be using fencing. That'll be put up, that'll be the first thing probably, right?
That's from what I read, yes. It says that
Okay.
orange fencing has to be put up.
Next thing is that to get any equipment in there, you have to go through the invasives.
Right.
And we know it cannot be paved because they're going to have such heavy equipment taking the trees out, the logs, and then also bringing in other heavy equipment to disturb the site. So most likely it's going to be a dirt road going in, stripped of the topsoil and that down to the sandy gravel, and maybe improvise with some stones or that to just stabilize the surface. But then you got the invasives on the sides, which you have to come up with a plan. How far are you going to go sideways to control them? Now, it's out of the buffer zone, so we can't say anything about it, but we can say and ask for a plan because it'd be dragging it in to the buffer zone area. And then you also have your septic system. I don't know when you plan to do those leaching fields. At the same time, you clear out the roadway and remove the invasives all at the same time?
That'll be the last thing.
Okay, that's what I figured. So that's another little issue that has to be of concern, because it's a limited area, but you're removing the soils and may have the invasive roots, they don't all get out, besides cutting some of the trees. So the next thing probably that's going to occur is they need to clear the lot of those extreme tall, mostly pine trees, with heavy equipment, which means that we had discussed before, someone needs to be around, hired, to make sure that whoever's doing the work doesn't go beyond the 25-foot or the restoration area. Also, we had mentioned the stumps that in most of the site where the construction is going on, they'll be removed, taken off site, not buried. But the stumps that are within the restoration area would be marked, and someone would have to oversee making sure they get ground up. I think that's what we kind of, I'm just trying to say is now when the silt controls go in, you had mentioned that you wouldn't prefer to put them in before all the trees and vegetation's cut. But yet, the general recommendation is that that should go in there before, but it is quite open, so it isn't, heavy brush. I just don't letting everybody know, when is that going to happen? Or is the whole place going to be cut and removed and then it goes in?
You're asking me? Yep. So here's our preference. is that, so it's just as you start out, we mark out the 25-foot no disturb and limit of clearing, which has actually already been done. It has to be modified a little bit based on the modifications. And then the next thing that'll be done, is as I'm reading this, and I haven't got into it in detail, is Jane wants a orange construction fence put up. And then what I would say is you cut down the trees. You don't take out the stumps, you don't do any of that, but you cut the trees down so that you can actually get in there with, and put in the silt sack. It's a 12-inch silt sack. It probably weighs 100 pounds for a 10-foot section. It's not something you schlep in. They bring a truck in, and they lay it, and then they blow the stuff into it. So you need some space to do that. And then once the erosion control barrier's in place, now you can start stumping and moving dirt. So that would be the way we normally do it and the way it makes sense to do it, because you're not disturbing soil if you're just cutting it. They're just gonna go over, pull the tree down and bring it out. They're not pulling out roots or anything. So there's not a lot of soil disturbance except by the vehicles. And then now all your erosion control is in place before you're actually disturbing soil, pulling stumps, grinding stumps, whatever has to be done in each particular area. And then I don't have, I don't know how you want to put in here. I know you have, there's a lot of requirements for somebody to oversee the landscaping and removal of invasives. That's easy. That would be Lauren. But I don't know if you want to put something in here, and I have no objection to it, but you want to put something in there that that the tree removal has to be overseen by a qualified person and identified to Jane prior to the work being done. That way you hold that person responsible. It doesn't make any sense to pay a professional engineer to stand there and watch somebody cut down trees, but you can, certainly make the construction manager or whoever it is, somebody is responsible. A person is responsible, and you've identified that person to Jane, and he has to do his job. So
Can I make a suggestion? Because I've been thinking this through over and over and over and trying to figure out how to do this in a good way. And basically, like we discussed the last time, the first thing that needs to be done is to get access to the site through the area that's covered in invasives.
It doesn't. I'm sorry to interrupt. It doesn't. So if you remember, right, you drive up the driveway, right? We've driven, you guys, everybody's been up there. You drive up that driveway, then there's a big path that goes straight out there. So we don't have to go in that way initially. We don't have to cut it in initially. We can just go in that way, and that is it's clear. It's already, I don't know what it was at one point, but it's a big wide path. Does everybody remember it? You guys remember it? Yeah.
That's where the machinery went in to do the test pits.
Yeah, do some perk tests. We did them, that's how we brought them in there, but it was there. So I think that would be the way. We don't necessarily need to come in that way up at the beginning, so that would be a better way to do it.
Well, the important thing I was going to mention is that, eventually if you're not going to put the roadway in first, and you're just going to be going in to do the trees, what I've come across is that if you use the grindings from trees, that includes all the parts rough ground, and you place them in an area that had invasive species, it could act kind of like a tracking pad for you. You don't want to grind up any invasive species, but if you just have pines and oaks and whatever, you can ship them all. Cover the route into and out of the site, and that would kill two birds with one stone, or as a friend of mine says, feed two birds with one seed. Where you'd have, this track pad, and it would prevent invasives from growing in the area that's going to be gone into and out of. It would make use of the materials on site in a good way, and
It's a good idea.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
can add, we can do that. You can add it as a condition if you
And the
want.
invasives portions that I put in there, it had to do with the invasives in the front lot mainly, because that's really where all of them are. But also, there's a ton of invasives that you're going to have to push through for your driveway,
Right,
which is not really in the commission's jurisdiction, but
we accept it.
yeah, it's the right thing to do as far as that pristine site goes.
So if you want to add that about the grindings, that's fine. Actually, Rentham does that, if you want to talk to
I have something in there about,
Darrell.
it was basically off of that Connecticut information on how to avoid invasive species on construction sites, or somewhere else, but it was some information I had about rough grinding trees to prevent, to keep the invasives from growing, basically, because it allows the water to go through. There's a listing somewhere. Wood chips. They provide excellent smothering material, is slow to decompose, stays on the surface, slow to enter soil, spoils fresh weed seedlings, and blocks vines and existing woody plants, permits passage of air and water while retaining soil moisture, encourages microbial populations, are locally generated and locally disposed, and can be used safely with new tree and shrub plantings. So win-win. I mean, no need to, when you bring stuff in from off-site, you never know what's going to be in it. And if it is known plant material that is not invasive, as is in the whole rear section of this parcel, I think it would make sense. And I'm sure I forgot something, but I've been working on it for so long, and I wasn't able to use a ton of your stuff, Lauren, because I didn't get it until I had already worked on all of these conditions, and I tried to incorporate some of it,
Yeah.
and more may be good to incorporate, but I've reached the limit of my brain exploding on this.
Yeah.
You reached the limit of work.
Yeah, the limit of work, very good. The low, L-O-W.
We did take a look through when we were outside, and I did see that a lot of the, in the first section of my recommendations, a lot of that was in your special conditions already, and I think we were referencing a lot of the same resource materials.
Yes.
The second section of my comments pertains to post-construction monitoring of invasive species. So I did see you had conditions on post-construction monitoring of the buffer mitigation by the specialist, but I recommended that we also had conditions specific to monitoring the site for 2 years for invasives.
Yeah, I sort of alluded to that, but I wasn't clear about it.
Oh, okay.
So if there's a way you can clarify that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think, I could suggest how to, I think it could be kind of tied into the same monitoring of the restoration area. It would be done by the same person during the same visit, and then I recommended that, so that for 2 years, the specialist would go out during the growing season, look for invasive species. If any were identified, they'd be reported to the owner for management, and then once that corrective action has been done, the specialist would return to the site, do another inspection, and then in that annual report to the commission would report on, how they're doing and if any corrective actions were taken.
Right. A lot of this stuff was boilerplate, and it occurred to me as I was going along that, we talked about the mitigation, buffer zone mitigation planting strip of 10 feet. But we also talked about the removal of invasives at the roadway and near the house. So then I ran out of brain power, really. I mean, it's kind of jumbled. If you can find a way to make it more efficient and make more sense, please do.
That we're good on the invasive.
But the bottom line is,
Post.
construction sequencing basically is you do this, 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 and this, and then you put in the buffer zone restoration strip, and it needs to be approved before any foundation is put in there. And I also, Bill, in case you didn't notice, I said in the project description, impervious pavers around the pool. So that would make my numbers off slightly, but whatever. It's quite a volume of work.
Yeah.
Couple other comments. In some of the places there with the buffer zone, the 25-foot ends, there may be some trees that are already on the ground, but they're sticking out further into the disturbed site. Recommend that they be cut off at the 25-foot area, which should be done when you're putting up the fence. They can get that done. And that way they'll grab onto it and pull the whole thing out, which is wildlife habitat on the lower slopes. And if a tree does fall probably into the no disturb zone, I don't know about the others, but I think we should just let it lay.
Well,
Because
that is
again-
habitat.
Yeah, because if they pull it out, you'll be pulling out the duff layer on top of the soils and branches will dig into the ground. And so that you're just doing the opposite of what you want to do in no disturb zone. Another thing is, the path that goes down to the water, maybe that should be built early. Let it stabilize, instead of doing it at the end. That way there, you're out of the no disturb zone, you're away from the bordering vegetative wetland area. And they can always walk down there and put the dock in later. Or they could put it in there at that time. But it's to get any of the workers and people from in the disturbed zone. Suggestion.
Go ahead, put it in, make it a condition.
You're going to make me a condition?
I'm making a suggestion, I don't know about the others.
Added in the sequence?
3 suggestions.
What?
3 suggestions.
3 suggestions. What about the,
Well, the tree, I think that if you can't go into this no disturb zone, you can't go into the no disturb zone.
That doesn't mean that somebody wouldn't go in and try to pull the whole play thing out when it's way into the,
With machinery?
yeah.
Well, there's no machinery can go in there, period.
Remember what
End of
happens on
discussion.
another street?
I know.
Where? One of my project? That's what I'm asking.
Sort of, kind of.
But those are 3 suggestions, and they could be easily done early.
We have no objection.
No trees. Also, as far as the fence, the boundary fence, I putting up, or including cement bounds with your little sign on them,
No objection.
which is insinuated to be on the same line as the split rail fence. It's not totally
You
clear.
said put it at every angle point, that's fine.
Well, basically, I did ask for a boundary plan
Yep.
too, so
That's
if you
fine.
could specify that on the plan,
Yes.
just, split rail fence and,
Concrete markers with.
concrete bound markers with a little sign on them.
Yep, that's fine.
Good. So David, you said path to water early on, so it stabilizes. No trees pulled out, and what was the other?
If there are existing trees there, they'd be cut off at the 25-foot line. And if a tree drops into the area when they're cutting, just because things like that can happen, cut it off at the 25-foot line and let the rest of it stay.
Well, if it falls, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily advocate cutting all the trees straight up
No, I'm not saying that.
from the 25-foot line.
If a tree is cut and it just goes the wrong way, it can happen, and it drops into the 25-foot line. Okay, cut it off at the fence, let it stay there, and let it rot. Because pulling it out is going to,
Well, I get that part. I thought you meant you just, like, when I explained to people,
no, not the,
the
Right.
trees and
If they make
liability.
an error in their cutting, they eat it, basically.
Okay, all right.
They leave it.
Or also if they're already down, right?
No, he's talking about if you cut a tree and it's supposed to fall this way and it falls that way into the no disturb area, it stays in the no disturb area rather than trying to pull it out of there.
But also current trees that are already down that might cross that, right? That's what-
Any current
Is it-
trees that are down in the no
You would-
disturb stay.
But if they were like crossed over, right?
Cut off at the
If you're
joint.
gonna say cut it off right at the
yeah,
joint.
when they're putting up the fence, that's the best time to do it.
Yeah.
To make for pretty and neat.
Okay, anything else?
I don't see anything in here, and maybe I missed it, I'm sorry, about a pre-construction meeting. I
That's
missed-
prior to construction.
What was on that?
Order, any changes?
I think we should have a pre-construction meeting.
Construction phasing. Yeah, okay.
And it just
thought I
forces
put-
everybody to sit in the same room and go over all these things again, so that the people who are doing the actual work get
Okay.
it.
Yep.
Huh, where did I put it? I know it's, should be in there.
All right.
So, one thing that was briefly discussed was the house, the existing house. Half of it is in the buffer zone, the other half isn't. I think there should be some type of a construction or demolition plan, and just to state what's going to be done, what's going to be protected around in the buffer zone. Though it's pretty relatively flat, I don't think you're going to have erosion problems unless you're digging out the foundation. And what you're going to do with the materials to make sure it's not being left behind, or if you're going to leave a footing and bury it.
That's a good point. I'd make
Because it was
that,
filed with the
Oh, wow.
original, the whole filing.
just make that a condition, again, is that, I thought we talked about it, it might not be on the plan, that,
It was briefly discussed as,
It has to
as
be, right.
part of the work that's going to occur on the entire
house
site.
has to be demolished and all the materials have to be removed from site.
And you also mentioned you're going to save that big tree there.
That, I know that's on the plan. Yeah, we
Oh, I
made a
didn't
note
put
there.
that in there either.
But that's on the plan, that's on the
It's on the
drawing,
plan,
it
yeah.
shows it. We talked about that, but you're right, the whole, it's just grass back there, so they're gonna knock it down, they're gonna bring a backhoe in, put it into a couple of dumpsters, they're gonna demo that foundation.
I have a
Totally
great
did.
dumpster sign for invasive plants.
That's in this.
The language is, but I've got the real sign, it looks pretty, if you would like it, if you would like a copy of it.
Yeah, and then they can, so if you want to put that in there, that, I would just say something, my suggestion is something similar to the demolition of the home on Lot 1. All materials shall be removed from site. So nobody dumps it into the hole. Nobody does that anymore anyways, but just to make sure.
Is it a poured basement? Is there a basement foundation in, okay.
Yeah, I don't know what kind it is. I mean, it might be stone, but I don't really know. But that, they'll have to take it out.
Another section about demo of house on Lot 1, all materials removed from site. Protection of tree. So I need a whole, another brochure about protecting trees during construction and how you have it on the drip zone, you know, blah, blah, blah.
It's not that close. It's not that close to the, I mean, it's like
Yeah,
probably
but you
30
go
or
by
40 feet.
the span.
Right,
So
but-
when you're doing the work of the house demo, unless you do it from the other side, you probably should.
You'd be
Yeah,
with the
it-
driveway, yeah.
From the driveway side,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that won't be a problem,
yeah,
especially
no.
if you're doing it from an impervious area.
Hmm.
But there's a whole lot of information in there about preventing equipment construction equipment from tracking, you know, cleaning it and checking it for leaks and that sort of thing, as well as my regular buffers, my boilerplate stuff. I do have an on-site meeting at 39, and by the way, all the numbers are wrong after 39, which states on-site meeting before starting the buffer zone mitigation work, but I will include one pre-construction meeting. I shall put that prior to construction. When will the house be demoed on lot 1? Do you know?
I don't know.
We couldn't.
I don't know.
They have to have a 50-foot.
Do you know the sequence of that? Will that be coming down before any construction?
I don't know.
Very probable.
The thing about that house is too, yes, you will be pulling things out and taking it off site, but there's an awful lot of invasive things around it. So that would probably need a specialist to be watching and making sure they did it right.
There wasn't any leaf, you know.
It's a minefield of invasive species there.
You have it on there.
It was based on looking at the map.
What,
You put that on there,
what's that?
what you just said. Special review, definition review.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we need to add?
Discretion on our part.
All set?
Oh, do we have a timing of what, on the old, conditions that I got, there was, the restoration area was supposed to be done before any house construction.
It does say that.
It still says that in the new
Still
ones?
says that, yeah.
Okay.
Look on page 3, buffer zone mitigation area requirements. Which basically says the reason for doing it is blah, blah, blah. Native plant specialist shall oversee all sorts of things. On-site meeting. Following construction, before beginning any house construction, specialist shall certify. Let's see.
So we can plant all those things. The trees are still,
All right.
you don't need to.
Are we ready?
Construction and phasing, on page 2, number 30, it says buffer zone mitigation area. Applicant shall complete activities prior to commencing any house construction activities.
Oh, you mean the ones that are just in the restoration? Yeah, I didn't see that.
That's what I was thinking, I mean, we can go in there, do all those plantings.
So when we mean before any house construction is done,
Restoring?
that,
And then go
that
back out
includes
later.
before
Yes, but then
any digging of foundations or anything like that?
it's just if the trees.
Anything
fall, we'll
associated
crush-
with house
Crush the
construction
plants.
Okay.
has to wait
We'll talk
until the trees are cut,
Yeah.
and then the buffer zone restoration area is installed in probably the boundaries, but if the orange construction fencing is enough, you're gonna kind of have double orange.
We were just talking, Laura and I were just chatting about it, I said, why can't we just go in and put the plantings in there now, without doing anything? And so she was thinking about it, so we might not need to do, we might go in and just do it, without putting any silt fence, hay bales, I mean, you're just planting shrubs by hand, they're not dug in or anything, these aren't trees.
But it would have to be after the trees are cut, right?
Why?
Plus you gotta grind the stumps in that 10-foot area.
It
too.
depends. We were chatting about that. I'm like, maybe. But some of these trees, why would we even knocking them down? Why would we knock them down if we're going to be planting shrubs around them?
Yeah, and the thing is, if there are shrubs in that area already, as there probably are, like
Right.
what do they call them?
The low bush.
Huckleberries?
Yeah,
The
the
huckleberries that are
low
low
bush.
growing, and they live in the dry slopes that are like that,
Yeah.
then they may just you might want to leave those and just amend them by adding a blueberry bush here and there, because they're probably going to have herbaceous things that would come up as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily, we might just do the plantings immediately, and then
Just leave the trees there instead of
Leave
cutting
the-
them down,
leave the
instead of
trees
clearing
there.
it.
That's what we talked about at the meetings and on the sidewalk. It's like, well, if it's not bothering anything, if it's not too close, if it's alive, if it's not a pine, we would probably just leave it in that 10-foot strip there.
Good.
Good.
Good. Then it cracks off and goes into the swimming pool.
Oh,
That's
stop.
why I said, if it's not a pine. Pines are gone, so, but if there are some nice hardwoods in there.
Are you all set?
Well, pretty much, in my haste, printed all these out for all of you on two sides. I didn't print a signature page, so I'm gonna have to run up and do that.
Okay.
So you can sign it tonight, if that is what you want to do. If you do approve it, the assumption is that it would be approved under both the bylaw and the state regs unless otherwise stated.
Okay. And this would be as modified.
As modified, yeah. Yep.
Because you've got a few modifications.
I got it.
Oh, you need a one-sided.
Oh, you got some you
Yeah, I
want?
was just gonna give
Because
her
I'm
some minor
neurotic.
ones,
Okay, you want to bring them up?
but,
Jane?
For purposes of, we need a couple,
Jim's got a couple of little,
Oh, yeah, you said you were gonna write some, weren't you?
well, you covered a lot, so, I think under the bylaw and the state act, you got no dumping. You have no dumping in the resource areas, but how about the no activity zone as well? That split rail fence they're gonna put up, I know it's difficult to enforce, but, if it comes into disrepair, it should be replaced. The fence, split rail fence, make that a continuing condition. And then just, make sure to include the recommendations from FAR with respect to the invasives. That's it.
Can you send that? No?
Yeah, I get it.
You have it written down? Good.
Yeah.
All right, so split reference continuing in perpetuity. Yeah, there could be so much more that we could do and add and whatever, but I've been going round and round and round and round on this for so long, it's giving me heart palpitations.
right?
It is.
Do you have the signature page there?
I do not, let me run up and get it.
Okay.
There was another thing too that was discussed. It's going to be a saltwater pool. Saltwater pools aren't backflush, but sometimes they do lower the water level. And I'm not a pool person, but
That reminds me, we need a final pool plan.
yeah, a
also.
pool plan.
A final pool plan needs to be added to this.
No discharge of saltwater pool drawdown or any drawdown of water it shall be taken away from the site. They pump it out instead of pumping it into the ground, and that's porous ground. So,
I didn't even put pool conditions, yeah.
yeah,
I have some in my pile of information I've been going through.
she
So I
gave
could
us
probably
that
add them.
information about that as a page 9 of 10,
Okay.
condensed history drafting order conditions.
I didn't even go back and look at that again.
And this remains forever, whether someone actually complies with it or
Yeah, okay.
it's something that does not go away with a certificate.
Right.
The pool, so the pool be in perpetuity
Right.
plus pool conditions. Oh, I'm gonna have to work on it another day. Oops, I'll be right back.
Okay. So with that, somebody want to make a motion to sign the order of conditions as amended?
Wait a minute.
But
Sorry, guys.
What do you got?
Bill,
Yes, sir.
Laura, you mentioned in here, and it was discussed, and it's also in the conditions, about washing the vehicles. But there's nothing on your plan, though that's a new type condition, but there's nothing on the plan of where. Have any suggestions? Because it can't be in the buffer zone.
Washing vehicles, like what vehicles are we talking about?
I think the work,
Construction vehicles.
the work vehicles.
The basic material of
Oh.
the soils off of it.
Well, we're talking about it, but back down at the entrance usually is what happens. Usually
That's outside the
it's
buffer
usually
zone.
it's down at the entrance before he hits the stone pad on the way out. You know what I'm talking about? So
Yeah.
that's way, way away.
You're gonna have you will have a stone pad down there, even though
Yeah,
it's a
there's a
driveway?
stone pad down there.
Okay.
But I really like the idea, I like the idea of using the existing driveway. I mean, why not? But, yeah, I mean, eventually that other driveway is gonna get put in,
Yeah, okay.
and it will have a stone pad. So that's a condition of the planning board. You can't track any material onto the street,
Yeah,
and it has to be cleaned up within a day. So that would be where that person would be.
I think,
But you're talking about there's the comment about not getting invasives onto the site.
Right.
So it's going both ways, right?
yeah.
Oh, right, right. Right, but we're cleaning the invasives before we start. Isn't that's what the order says. The invasives are cleaned out before you start.
but you're not gonna put the driveway in, you're gonna go in by the existing, track on lot 1 into the woods.
Initially, yeah.
There might be some invasives right there in the beginning, but I don't think there was much there.
Not really.
On the driveway, you mean? Oh, at the beginning, at the
Where the,
pad?
where the backhaul went in, that way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty clear through there now.
Yeah,
It was before.
yeah, well, I know what you're talking about. So if you come out, if you're, if you pull in, we went to the left toward the shed.
Yeah.
We're digging some test pits for septic. But what I'm talking about is the big path straight back out. It's a path. There's no, I mean, maybe there's invasives in there, but I didn't.
I don't think so.
It's just a big dirt
Not
path.
beyond like the tree line of the house lot. I don't think there's
That's
very
how we'd
much.
initially get in there.
And that might be a good area, Laura, to put down the chips in that. I know when we logged certain lots, we would use wood chips at the landing area, and we would get muddy in that. And it prevented the invasives, allowed the naturals to come back later.
Yeah.
So it does work.
Yeah, that is the best site, because you wouldn't use that down on the roadway, driveway, because you don't want to mix that into your gravel base. But up top, it's a good spot for it.
Maybe at the pre-construction meeting, confirm that it's a designated area.
Yeah, I have that, I wrote that down.
I think we're all set, right? You all set?
Yeah, well, we've got to, nobody's made a motion yet.
What are we thinking? Make a motion to issue an order of conditions approving 157610
As modified.
as modified under both the state act
State and the
and the
law, yep.
We already closed the hearing?
we did close the hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion's on the table.
Okay, motion's been made to accept the order of conditions as modified, as we discussed it tonight, for approval of the project, both state and the local town bylaw. Do I hear a second? Second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Good. Just for general information, thank you for coming, the audience. Since we closed the hearing last time, no more input could come in. It's, I hope you understand that. But thank you for showing up and keeping us on our toes. As soon as we get the signature page, we can sign it, then we can adjourn. Okay, now I can get rid of it.
I never knew how much paper this
Oh, I know it.
position.
Hey, Bill, I got a question for you. I got a call from a client, right? He's under agreement for a vacant lot, which is part of a property. The guy who's buying it, my client who's buying it.
Two of them?
Doesn't want it in the location that was approved by the Board of Health. He wants to move it elsewhere on the property. Chris Bischoff, who's the agent for the town, says, no, you already got an approved plan. You can't, we're not gonna approve a new plan for relocating the system and for a new system. Have you ever heard that before? No. It's not that old. I think it's
So, let's see.
maybe. Then it's going anyways, right? Okay,
Right, if you're looking at Title 5, it's got to 6 months.
okay.
And then after that, the permit expires, so nobody ever enforces
Never,
it.
okay.
But if you look at that, no, I've never heard that.
Never heard
They
that.
can file it, and then he has 45 days to approve or disapprove.
So did you vote for all of these things,
Okay.
basically?
Why do these people make like
I know, I agree with you.
Dave,
Two
did you
pages.
say? Has everybody else signed both of them so far? Okay. One,
Oh, is that?
One of them.
No, what
I saw the craziest thing on,
Or if they say what?
Instagram. I happened to come across this one thing, and
So
they got
you
into
said
others.
two crazy things there.
right, so-
One of them is really
Yeah,
bad,
that's-
really crazy, and that's
Based on the scientific
Well,
information
what it
about
ended up
buffer
looking
zones
like
and
were these people who were
permeability,
doing
that
this-
such
Yes.
a rapid.
do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn meeting?
So I can
second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.